Richard Dawkins. Now, you're obviously on different sides of the fence, and to a new atheist like a Richard Dawkins or a Sam Harris, what are your thoughts, not on these guys as people, as humans, but for what they've contributed to the conversation?
I have actually a surprising admiration for Richard Dawkins, both as a writer of very clear prose about science, but especially for his ability to frame foundational issues. In The Blind Watchmaker, first page, famous quote, he says, "Biology is the study of complicated systems that give the appearance of having been designed for a purpose," where the key word is appearance. That is classical Darwinian thinking. And it frames the issue extremely clearly. Is the appearance of design that we see in living systems the product of an unguided, undirected process, such as natural selection acting on random mutations, such that it's only an appearance? Or do we have evidence in biology of features that are best explained by an actual designing intelligence? It's one or the other. It's beautiful framing. Now, of course, I disagree with Dawkins about the answer he gives in the end. And for one thing, Dawkins himself acknowledges that no one knows how life first evolved, and yet there is a striking appearance of design in the first living cell. So there's at least one and that is the digital code, the information storage, transmission, and processing system. We've been talking about the miniature machines, all of that. None of that has been explained as the result of an undirected chemical evolutionary process or origin. And so there's at least one striking appearance of design that has not been explained away by undirected evolutionary processes, or one class of such. And so that opens the whole discussion up again. But the framing is beautiful. That's exactly right. It's either mind or matter that are the ultimate explanatory principles. Secondly, another beautiful framing device that he uses in another of his books. He says that the universe we observe has precisely the properties we should expect if at bottom there's no purpose, no design, ... nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. That's a wonderful way of framing the ultimate issue of the relationship between science and larger, as you might call them, worldview explanations or metaphysical hypotheses. Dawkins is a scientific materialist. He's a scientific atheist. He's saying that what we see in the world around us is exactly what we'd expect if scientific materialism were true. That is, if matter and energy were the eternal self-existent things that did not require an external creator. But what he's also implying is that metaphysical hypotheses like scientific materialism or theism or pantheism are testable in much the same way we test our scientific hypotheses. We go out, we have a hypothesis about reality. We go out and we look at the universe and we see, well, do the properties match what I would expect based on my metaphysical hypothesis? If they don't, then I need to adjust my thinking. But if they do, then I have confirmation. Well, I use that framing quotation in my new book, Return of the God Hypothesis, because for one, it does affirm that metaphysical systems of belief, or like a God hypothesis or like scientific materialism, are testable in much the same way we test scientific theories. But secondly, because I make the argument, now in this case, I'm contra Dawkins, I'm 180 degrees on the opposite pole, that the properties that we see in the universe are not what you'd expect if there was nothing but blind, pitiless indifference. They're not what you'd expect based on scientific materialism. The scientific materialism through materialists from the 1920s up until at least the 1990s, and now even into the present, as you've mentioned, have resisted the idea that the universe has a beginning. And yet the hard evidence we have is pointing decisively in that direction. But they have resisted it. Why? Because it's inconsistent with scientific materialism. You wouldn't expect the universe to have a beginning if matter and energy are eternal and self-existent, as scientific materialists have long affirmed. It's contradictory. Either if the universe is eternal and self-existent, it doesn't have a beginning. But what we have seen is that the universe does have a beginning. That's an unexpected result on the basis of scientific materialism. Similarly, the materialists did not expect the exquisite fine-tuning that's been discovered. Witness the conversion from materialism to theism by Fred Hoyle, who discovered many of those first parameters. And most importantly, the scientific materialist did not expect the integrated complexity of the living cell. Richard Dawkins himself, 2 summers ago, tweeted in response to a new animation that was uploaded onto YouTube by an Australian group depicting, I think it was the DNA replication system, which is part of the overall information processing system in the cell. And Dawkins confessed to being knocked sideways at wonder at the complexity of the information processing that was going on inside the cell as depicted by this video. The living cell bears hallmarks of intelligent design. That is to say, there are features of the information. I mean, information itself is a hallmark of intelligent design, but there are design patterns in the way the information is processed, meaning established methods of processing information that are known from high-tech digital computing. We've got automated error correction in the cell. We have sophisticated encryption where you have one genetic message layered on top of another. It's called overlapping genes. These are strategies for data compression or embedding messages in other messages that are known from cryptography. So we are finding things in the living system that A, have not been explained by any chemical evolutionary model of the origin of life, and B, which in any other realm of experience would trigger an awareness of a designing intelligence, a master programmer of some kind. So when you take Dawkins's framing and apply it to these debates, you see evidence of A, actual design, and B, evidence that is much more expected on a theistic design hypothesis than it is on the basis of scientific materialism, qua blind, pitiless indifference. So I love the way he frames the debates, and I think that actually makes it helpful to get to the truth, but I think he's come to the wrong conclusion.